Chair Swinson.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. And can I say what a pleasure it is to follow the Honourable Gentleman for the City of York, who has done some excellent and, may I indeed say, serious work in his role as the chair of the CPA. He made a very well-made speech, and I hope he didn't mind too much my intervention. But as the only Scot in the chamber at the time, I did feel some kind of duty to make the point that I did. I would also like to offer my apologies, Mr Deputy Speaker, that I will not be able to stay for the whole debate. I have a prior commitment elsewhere in the House that was arranged some weeks ago, but I do intend to be back for the wind-ups. I would also like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Southwark and Bermondsey, for his tenacity over the period of several weeks in lobbying to get this debate heard, and congratulate the government in agreeing to have this debate in their time. Of course, with Commonwealth Day just last Monday, it has come at a very appropriate time in the calendar. I had the wonderful experience last week of being on a trip organised by the FCO for parliamentarians to the UN, and so I was actually in New York on Commonwealth Day. And on that particular day, the British Deputy Permanent Representative to the UN was hosting a reception, which was to celebrate a new report about peacekeeping. But at that reception were a variety of ambassadors and figures from countries, members of the UN, but particularly also members of the Commonwealth. And it was particularly moving at that reception that the Ugandan Permanent Representative to the UN actually read out a statement as part of a celebration of Commonwealth Day. And the thing that I was struck by, just talking informally to representatives there from a variety of different Commonwealth countries, was the great value that they also place on this association, on this network, on this great organisation and lasting set of relationships. And I think it's important that our debate today is underscored by that. Clearly, any debate entitled "The UK and the Commonwealth" is going to be wide-ranging, and it's very welcome that we have so many different issues raised. I would like to refine my remarks to a few key points: the importance of the Commonwealth and the roles that it can play in terms of resolving conflict and indeed tackling climate change, and indeed the rights of Commonwealth citizens in this country. We've heard from members who have spoken already about the great importance of the Commonwealth, with 2 billion people living in Commonwealth countries, 53 countries across the globe, and this great mix that we have within the Commonwealth of both North and South, a diversity of ethnicity, of racial mix, religious and cultures, all different across the countries and indeed within those countries, crossing all the different continents of the world, and indeed going from very large countries with huge populations like India to the very, very small island states. It provides a very welcome alternative international forum for discussion of a whole range of issues. We've already heard about the Millennium Development Goals, about climate change, and while we do have our formal structures through the EU and through the UN, I believe to have these different groupings of countries coming together and having dialogue actually is a complementary thing to have happening alongside other international governance structures. We also know the great contribution that people from the Commonwealth make to the UK, because of course there are many thousands of Commonwealth citizens here living and working, contributing to the UK day in, day out as doctors, as teachers, setting up businesses and choosing to make Britain their home, although as my honourable friend did mention, not always necessarily taking up British citizenship, which can provide for some difficult issues. Certainly we're good way.
On that point, in the context of the very live debate now about citizenship and nationality and how immigrants have to be encouraged to feel British and so on, I think it's worth putting on record that there's no group of immigrants more passionate about Britain and more passionately proud of being British than Commonwealth immigrants. The generation that came from the West Indies in the 1950s are more proud of Britain, I think, almost than those of us in this chamber, and I'd like to place that on record.
Very much welcome the Honourable Lady's intervention, and indeed when I come to the point later in my speech about the rights of Commonwealth citizens, I will indeed be picking up that point, because there are very many reasons why somebody living in Britain might want to retain the links with their home country and therefore not take up British citizenship, and that shouldn't necessarily be to their detriment for their rights within this country. We have, as we've heard, 7,000 of our armed forces come from Commonwealth countries, and indeed the strong links that we have from people in the Commonwealth who live here but retain family connections in other Commonwealth countries, and indeed UK citizens who go and live in other Commonwealth countries, which is becoming increasingly important as well. And all of these help to bind the countries together. I was very pleased to see the Minister mention the Commonwealth Games due to be held very close to my constituency in 2014 in Glasgow, and we're certainly very much looking forward to those. But I think through sport, like other cultural activities, there is an opportunity for countries to come together and share experiences, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the value of events and institutions like the Commonwealth Games as well. In preparing for this debate, I did some research and managed to print off from the website a list of all the Commonwealth countries and indeed their flags, which is no doubt going to stand me in good stead for pub quizzes or Trivial Pursuit questions in the future. But what struck me about looking down this list was the sheer diversity of countries. And of course, there's many of these countries that I've visited and been to and that are very familiar and sort of commonly talked about. There are some which are more remote and far-flung, and my opinions of which, I'm sure like many other members, come more from what we see on the news, what we read in the newspapers, and personally, in the case of Botswana, from the fabulous literature series that is the #1 ladies detective agency, which paints very vivid pictures of that African country. I have to confess, I put my hands up to some ignorance when I saw the state of Kiribati listed. I scratched my head and was not sure where it was, and I've asked several people since, and I haven't managed to get an answer, so you never know, the Minister might be able to fill us all in on that one and stand us in better stead for such trivia quizzes in her reply. She may, well, I may well be kind to the Minister. I'm sure she'll be able to cover that nurse. Okay.
I'll happily respond. It's pronounced, so I'm told, Kiribati, and it's in the Pacific, and I did meet the delegate from there when I was at the Commonwealth Women Affairs Ministers meeting, and as my honourable friend for York says, it is one of those low-lying areas, many islands which are at risk.
Very much welcome that intervention from the Minister and informing us all of something which some of us may not have known before. There are obviously countries on this list which also have been in the news much recently, and I would like to turn to just a few of those countries where the role of the Commonwealth in safeguarding peace and security and in actually sometimes being able to step in and have a role in resolving disputes has been important. And first of all, I would like to turn to Kenya, which has already obviously been mentioned today. Kenya, for many years, a great success story in Africa with a burgeoning economy and a stable political system, and indeed the elections in 2002 being so widely praised for the fair and free way in which they were undertaken. And it was within that context that we all saw, to our horror, the events unfolding late last year and early this year, with violence and people being killed and having to flee their homes as a result of the conflict after the disputed elections. But I think what we've also seen, and what we should take heart from, is the value of international diplomacy, of the action taken by Kofi Annan, obviously, but a variety of countries also behind the scenes, including Commonwealth countries, that has actually managed to bring Kenya back from the brink of disaster and create a platform for a peaceful resolution to the tension and hopefully to prevent further violence. We're obviously still in early days of the power sharing agreement between the two parties, but I think we would all hope that we will be able to secure a stable future for Kenya, that it will get the constitutional reform that is needed, and that the Commonwealth states will be able to continue to support Kenya and see it return to the successful figurehead country, really, as it was managing to be a real example to other countries within that region. Another somewhat fragile state at the moment, obviously, is Pakistan. And in the aftermath of the assassination of Benazir Bhutto, we've had obviously many debates in this House and questions asked about Pakistan. And it obviously caused a great deal of concern, particularly in the run-up to the elections on the 18th of February. Very pleasing to see that, of course, those elections passed off with relatively little disruption. And the new political mix perhaps marks quite a change in public opinion in Pakistan, and with the parties of Sharif and Zardawi working together, again there may be some hope that Pakistan will have somewhat of a brighter future, although again, obviously, very much in the early stages. And I share and I welcome the Minister's comments that the Commonwealth will hopefully be able to support Pakistan to fulfil the conditions needed to become once more a full member of the Commonwealth and embrace democratic representation and the rule of law. Also already mentioned is Sierra Leone, which I think is, again, another great success story for international cooperation and the strong links between the UK and Sierra Leone through the Commonwealth, I think clearly were part of the motivation which pressed the UK to act and actually intervene to end the crippling civil war which they had. And I had the great privilege at the end of last year to travel to Sierra Leone with the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, I think as one of the later parts of the project that the Honourable Member for York described, along with the Honourable Lady for Crosby, who I hope will be sharing these experiences with the House in a contribution later on, and indeed from the Conservative Party, the Right Honourable Member, I think, for Thanet. And I'm sure the Hansard writers will get the full constituency name down. What struck me about that visit to Sierra Leone, and I really have to confess I was quite taken aback. I didn't really know what to expect going to the third poorest country in the world, which had been ravaged so recently, within 5-6 years, by a most devastating civil war. What I hadn't really expected to find was the great degree of positivity, which was everywhere. Absolutely everywhere, from the sort of smiling faces when you went into the Parliament building, but in the streets with the coconut sellers and the bustle that was going on, there was such a sense of optimism. And given the horrors that every family had some experience of, everybody that we spoke to when we were waiting for the ferry or travelling around, and spoke to people about their experiences. Everybody had lost a brother, a father, an uncle, a mother, a daughter in the Civil War, if not several relatives. And yet they did manage to have this wonderful outlook. And I think that can-do attitude is going to take Sierra Leone far, but I think that's also, we have to recognise, being made possible by interventions, and indeed they feel very strongly full of thanks towards the interventions of the UK, and indeed DFID is still the biggest development agent that is working out there at the moment, and I'm sure we will hear more, as I say, from the Honourable Member for Crosby about the situation in Sierra Leone, as I know she is a frequent visitor to that country. While we can recognise the successes internationally, I think we also do need to recognise where we have sadly failed, and I think Zimbabwe would be a case in point. There were some horrifying statistics that the Honourable Member for the City of York shared with us. Inflation, depending on which figures you believe, is between 7,000 and 13,000%. 4 out of every 5 people is living below the poverty line, and a quarter of people have had to flee their homes. It truly is a horrific situation brought about by the very destructive impact of Mugabe's regime. And it was right that in 2003 at the Commonwealth CHOGM meeting, which I think is a very interesting and amusing acronym, but it rightly focused on the role of Zimbabwe and looked at whether suspension would be the right way to bring its influence to bear. Of course, Mugabe at that point decided that he would take Zimbabwe out of the Commonwealth, and it is very regrettable that we have not been able to have greater influence on that country and use our abilities in talking with other neighbour countries in that region to get them to bring more pressure to bear, because it's the people of Zimbabwe who are suffering. Give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank the Honourable Member for giving way, and I agree with her that it's very sad the Commonwealth haven't been able to be more involved in Zimbabwe. Would you share with me the fact that it's really sad that the elections being held next week, that the African Union and South Africa in particular didn't press for Commonwealth observers of that election, which would have helped to give some credibility to what quite honestly is going to be a totally flawed election process?
So the Honourable Lady is quite right, because indeed Human Rights Watch have done a report, and they have come to the conclusion the elections are due to be deeply flawed because of people not being allowed to register to vote, and then on the other side, dead people being allowed to register to vote, repression of opposition parties, and a very difficult situation there. One potential chink of light may well be that the former finance minister challenging Mugabe could potentially provide another way forward, but as I say, that is perhaps a vain hope. But the electoral process has to be the bedrock of a country's stability, and when that is flawed, as we saw in Kenya, then the consequences can indeed be dire. So I think that is one country where we cannot have the bask in the glow of success of what we've managed to achieve internationally, and obviously I would press the government to use every possible channel open to them to take further action on this issue. The theme of the 2008 Commonwealth Day was the environment, our future, and I think it is right that an international organisation like the Commonwealth has a focus on climate change. As a member of this House's Environmental Audit Committee, we're currently undertaking an inquiry into the international context after Kyoto. One of the things we've been finding is the frustration about UN negotiations and how slow and bureaucratic that process can take. And after speaking to some individuals that take part in those negotiations, one begins to wonder if we will ever find a solution and get international agreements. And therefore, I think what we have to do is to welcome any other international bodies that can actually be used as a forum to push for progress, both to encourage countries to take the UN negotiations more seriously, but also possibly some unilateral action by countries or by groups of countries working together to cut their carbon emissions, and indeed, most importantly perhaps when we're looking at Commonwealth countries, also to put in place good adaptation measures. You know, countries like India as part of the Commonwealth have surely got an important role to play in this, and I hope that with this theme they can be encouraged as a rapidly industrialising country to look at how they can perhaps learn from our past mistakes and create an economy that is much lower carbon than we have so far managed to do. The scientists tell us that a 2-degree temperature rise may not even be possible to keep to that, and it may end up being more than that. The impact of this is going to be felt most harshly on many of our Commonwealth friends, indeed the small island states, the Tuvalus and Vanuatus, and indeed some of the larger states, low-lying Bangladesh, for example, is under great threat, and in Australia, additionally, is a country which already experiences very extreme weather patterns, and just a small change to make those events even more extreme could have really very difficult consequences, and thankfully their government is now looking more seriously at what they can actually do to address the issue of climate change after almost a decade of denying its existence. I feel that the world is perhaps beginning to wake up to the threat of climate change. But the analogy I would use is that it's perhaps rather than rolling over in bed and looking at the alarm clock and realising, oh my goodness, I've slept in, and rushing out the door and acting immediately. It's, waking up, having a stretch, having a yawn, thinking maybe I'll go and have some breakfast. Just the sense of urgency that is being demonstrated in all of the international institutions, and even, I would contend, by this government, does not seem to match the scale of the challenge that we're facing. So I would urge the government to act with a sense of great urgency on this issue, and importantly use their influence with our Commonwealth partners to do likewise. I'd just like to turn finally to the rights of Commonwealth citizens here in the UK. We've all spoken, and I'm sure we will hear more in this debate, about the importance of the Commonwealth, and therefore it is right that we think seriously about how we show those Commonwealth citizens living in the UK that they are indeed valued members of the community, and that we value this network that is the Commonwealth. And I think, as has already been mentioned by one of the honourable members from the Conservative benches, the ancestry visas, the proposal to get rid of these has come back, I think, twice within 4 years, and is a very worrying one. I hope the Minister might intervene.
I'm glad, thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm glad the Honourable Lady has referred to that, because I just want to correct something that I said earlier in the debate. I mixed my consultations up. The consultation on the visitor visa was finished in March. The consultation on the ancestry issue doesn't finish until May, so there's still plenty of time for honourable members and others to respond.
It's a very welcome clarification, and I do hope that the consultation responses will show that retaining these ancestry visas is an important thing in terms of keeping our links with Commonwealth countries, and that indeed as a result of the consultation the government will decide that that is the right way forward. There's also been yes, certainly.
I'm very grateful the Minister was helpful in giving that correction. Does my own friend agree that what would be really useful is for all colleagues to inform themselves how many Commonwealth citizens they have in their constituencies? In mine, it's probably about 1 in 5 of the community, and therefore we really have an obligation to make sure the people resident in this country understand the proposal, because if they understand it, I'm sure the government will get a very significant response.
My honourable friend makes his point very clearly and well. The other issue regarding the rights of Commonwealth citizens in this country that I just wanted to touch on before I finish, Mr Deputy Speaker, is the rights of Commonwealth citizens to take part in our elections and to vote. The recent review by the Noble Lord Goldsmith on citizenship published this month seems to question whether that is a right that should be retained or otherwise. I would argue very strongly that it should be retained, that it is important, and in fact I would go further than that. As we have heard, there are many Commonwealth citizens working, living in the UK and contributing to our society who, for a variety of reasons, retain citizenship of their home country, and indeed do not know they are eligible to vote in this country. And so I think rather than just retaining it, which we should do, we should actually have a concerted effort to make sure that people are aware of their rights currently to vote in elections, so that they can actually play their full role in the democratic process of this country. So I would urge the government, rather than to remove this right, instead to promote it. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Commonwealth is a hugely important organisation and a key part of UK heritage, and as well I also believe it is a vital part of the UK's future.